Hello everyone, happy learning of QMS Day 3. So, after learning about some basic definitions relating to auditing, now let's move into the next topic, which is a type of audit or the classification of audit. Audit could be classified in two ways. One is whether the audit is a product audit, process audit, or the system audit. This is the one way to classify the audit. And another way to classify the audit is whether the audit is the first party audit, second party audit, or the third party audit. So there are two main types of classification. When it comes to auditing, let's talk about the first classification, which is whether the audit is a product audit, process audit, or the system audit. So let's start with the product audit. In product audit, what we are auditing is the product, whether the product is meeting the requirement or not, whether the product is fit for use or not. So let's talk about this pen. In the product audit, I am expected to audit this product. So what I will be doing is whether this product meets the requirement or not. So those requirements could be the size of this, the finishing of the pen, and how much you can do write with this pen. Let's say 5 kilometers you can write. So I might want to put this on a machine and keep on checking that how long I can write with this pen. And then it is a product audit. Here, my focus is on the product and I'm checking whether the product is meeting the specifications or not. Coming to the next type of audit, which is the process audit. In process audit, one specific process, activity, or function is audited, and then you compare that with the documented requirement of that process. Okay, now let's understand this with a simple example. Let's take two simple examples of the process audit. Let's say there is a process in which operator is expected to pick nut from one side, bolt from other side and put them together. The nut and a bolt, put them together. This is a very simple process. Now, in this process audit, what I will be seeing is I will be seeing at the requirement, and the requirement will say that the inspector is expected to pick the nut from the bin and the bolt from another bin and fasten them together. So there is a requirement, and I will be actually checking whether the actual process is being done or not. So broadly, this is a process audit. This was a very simple process, but then you could have complex, and definitely you would have some complex processes while doing audit. So there your focus is on the process. Let's take another example of process. That could be the process of, let's say, training. So in the process of training, the company is expected understand the needs of employees, and before they need to understand what employees knows, what the employee is expected to what expected, then plan and arrange the training for that, and then evaluate the result of that. This is one of the process of training. Or let's say another process could be process of calibrating, when each equipment what you use for a measurement should be calibrated. So for that, there might be a long process which will tell that each instrument need to be identified. Then the periodicity of the calibration need to be defined, that after how many days, how many months, how many years you need to calibrate that. Where would you do that calibration, and how would you identify whether the calibration has been done or not? And how will you identify when the instrument is done for calibration? This is the another process. This is a big process, so you might want to do audit of that process. Process could be simple process, which I told, picking nuts and bolts and putting them together. The process could be a process of training in the company or the process of calibration and so on, and many more examples like such. There are numerous number of processes in an organization. So if you compare to what is required versus what is the actual thing, what is required for those processes, that will be the process audit. So here we will talk of process. You have some inputs and you have some outputs. So that is what is shown here on the bottom side of the corner of the slide. So any process will have some input and some output. And then process could be broken down into number of steps. Let's say step 1, step 2, and step 3, depending on the organization and what type it is, and so on. I talk about these process and these steps in case of training, in case of calibration. So you need to look at each of these steps and see whether these steps are followed as per the specified SOP, let's say procedure or not. So this is a process audit. Now coming to the third type of audit, that is system audit. System audit is a comparative audit of multiple processes. I'm repeating it again. Competitive, comprehensive audit of multiple processes. So in process audit, you audit only one process. Let's say you just audit the process of training, or you just audit the process of calibration of instrument, right? But when it comes to a system audit, here you will look at the number of the processes. And another important thing in the system audit is it is not multiple process audit. Here you have not just auditing multiple processes, but here you are auditing the interaction between those processes as well. So let's understand this with an example. Let's take a simple example of an organization. So where you have, let's say, sales department. Now, what the sales department do? Sales department takes the order from the customers and passes on to the design team. So the design group does some designing and pass it on to the production team. Let's keep it simple here. Now, when it comes to the process audit, you might want to do the process audit of the sales. You might want to do the process audit of the design. You might want to do the process audit of production. But when it comes to the system audit, you look at the middle area as well. The interaction between the two processes, how the sales information is passed on to the design group, how the design group receives that information, interpret that information, and so on. So here you look at the interaction between the processes, between the interdepartmental processes, as well as when it comes to the system audit. So here is the summary of these three type of audit: the process audit, the product audit, and the system audit. As you would notice in this all, that the product audit has a limited scope. The scope of process audit is bigger, and the system audit is quite comprehensive. So this is one way to classify audit, whether you are doing the product audit, process audit, or the system audit. In the next video, we will talk about another classification of auditing, whether the audit is a first party, second party, or third party. So let's look at the next video. Stay tuned.